We've got a big batch of storms ready to slam the Pacific Northwest coastline as November starts, and many of those are expected to begin moving eastward as we head throughout the middle of the month and even towards the back half of the month. We'll take a long-range look ahead at what you can expect this November right here on ONW in this video.
One Nation Weather.
Thank you so much for being here with me in this video. Storms are expected to continue bashing the Pacific Northwest coastline as we head through at least the middle part of the month. You can see here are some of the systems for us here as I'm filming this video in your November 1st into your November 2nd, pushing on into places like Seattle, Medford, Eugene, Oregon, Portland, Oregon. All these areas we're looking at very hefty rainfall, even towards Spokane, Washington. Of course, the mountains there break it up just a little bit, but nonetheless, this is some very heavy rainfall, and some of the highest elevations getting in on some snow as well. That's system number one. System number two pushes in as we go in towards our Saturday time frame. This is your November 4th. And then look at that as we head towards your November 6th, the start of a new week. Another system pushing on in. So overall, the trend I'm trying to show you here is that right now we've got pretty much an atmospheric river over this region. And overall, some of the precipitation from that is moving eastward and in a slightly weaker phase, but still making its way towards portions of the Great Lakes. Now, in terms of tracking your European model systems, as we head through about the November 11th time frame, right now we've got ridging along the west coast. We've got, of course, the big dip in the jet stream that's bringing down the cool polar vortex, really, into portions of the east. That is not lasting long. That's departing, and we're going to see really a rebound in temperatures over the entirety of the country by the time we make our way through the weekend. But what you're noticing here, something I want to point out to you, we've got high pressure really beginning to move into the Four Corners region by the time we head towards your Saturday, November 4th, and that's going to begin moving eastward. But another little appendage in the map that I want you to see that's not really noticeable if you're just glancing at it is this little white area here over Iowa in the Midwest. This is a little system that made its way out of the Pacific Northwest. That's system number one that I just showed you a minute ago. And essentially, it's making its way into this region. And while it's not looking big in this picture, it could at least bring a quick hit of some rainfall, maybe even some snowfall as well to this region. Notice here how the ridge begins to degrade in some of the northern areas as we head, say, 5 to 10 days out, pushing on off towards the south a little bit, though the anomalies won't necessarily fall as quickly as the ridge does. Overall, though, this is making the way for more storms to make their way over the northern tier of the United States, and as that does so, some of them could also fall on down into portions of the East Coast. So you can see really here, that's probably what's left of system number 2 there. You can see a system number 3 along the West Coast. You get my gist here. We're getting these systems to move through, and overall, at least for the early part of the November for us, we're looking at these systems really riding over the ridge and making their way to the East Coast, and that's the trend, at least for the first 10 days of the month, with that ridging making their way, especially prominent here over the Four Corners region. And then look at that, the European model even indicating this pattern at least persisting in some manner as we head towards November 11th. You can see a stronger system, in fact, the strongest one we've seen, pushing towards the West Coast at that time, but that's something a little further out to be keeping an eye on, though. In terms of your likely pattern through the November 10th time frame, again, low pressures moving through the Pacific Northwest, over the North Central, into the Northeast, maybe some impacts on the Southeast, but overall, the southern tier is expected to be drier than average, which is interesting, kind of the opposite of what you would expect with El Nino. Things might be flipping around, though, as we head towards the back half of the month. This is your Climate Prediction Center temperature outlook for November 7th through 11th. You can see, again, this is really showing you where the storms are going to be, bringing down the cooler air over the north and east, but most areas along the West Coast, and especially in the southern part of the country, right along that Gulf coastline, that's where we're looking at temperatures a solid bit above normal. Now, in terms of your Climate Prediction Center November precip trend forecast, this is basically just looking at your November forecast. I just put it in my own graphic here. The Pacific Northwest expected to be quite a bit above average precipitation-wise, especially in Washington and Oregon, but Northern California, even portions of the Rocky Mountains might even get in on some of this. The precipitation is expected to be below average over the Great Lakes, which is definitely something that we tend to see with El Nino. And another thing we see with El Nino is the strengthening of some of the systems coming out of the Gulf and moving up the East Coast, which you can at least see there in some of those greens in the Southeast. And then in terms of your Climate Prediction Center November temperature trend forecast, warmer than average over the western coast, while most of the South looks to stay around average to slightly above it. And then in the Northeast, that's where it's looking like things will be a little bit below average as those systems dive on down. So this is also something that's a little abnormal for El Nino. But again, we're not in the full swing of winter yet, so things are still changing. We're seeing patterns shift around, and it's not going to be like this the whole month. Overall, though, warmer than average conditions are anticipated, especially along the west coast. Now, with your likely October precipitation anomaly, I'm expecting the highest concentration of above average precipitation to be over that Pacific Northwest region, with slightly below average precipitation there into portions of southern Arizona and southern New Mexico, as well as far southwestern Texas. Over the Great Lakes, I've kind of got below average just to go with the El Nino trends, but honestly, I'm thinking that this could be kind of a mixed bag with some switches between some droughts and some wetter periods in that region, with, in terms of the East Coast, looking like we'll overall be pretty stormy in this area. Now, with your precipitation totals, this is through mid-November with the GFS. You can see all the way as we go, this is just as we go through the next 5 to 7 days. Very heavy rainfall totaling on up through the first week of November here, especially in the Pacific Northwest. Some of those systems sliding some half-inch to inch totals eastward, but those red and yellowish colors are where we're looking at least 2 to 4 inches of rain just in the first week. High pressure there over the southern corridor of the United States, keeping it bone dry for those first 5 to 7 days. But as you can see, moisture begins to pump in from the southerly direction for us as we head towards the middle of the month to back half of the month, and overall that's when it looks like things, as we head, say, towards the 12th, 13th, 14th, we might begin to really see systems make their way on through the East Coast, as well as we get more of a southerly flow there. So my overall trends to expect for November, kind of a mixed bag there over the Great Lakes, wet over the Pacific Northwest, warm over most of the west and southern tier of the United States, with a little dry patch there in portions of Arizona and New Mexico, and wetter than average there along the East Coast. This is not official November forecast, but something to keep an eye on as we go throughout the month, and an overall guidance, guidance point for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the content, go ahead and like and subscribe.